A'udzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma, Rabbi irzuqni ilma. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'a wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. Wa tawakkal 'ala wa kafa billahi wakila. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanallahi al-azim. And whatever that I am going to be sharing, if it is the truth, it is from Allah, and if it is not the truth, then it is from my own nafs. And may Allah make it easy upon us, and may Allah show us the guidance through our own darknesses at all times. Ameen. And keep our hearts open to receiving the truth as truth is, not through the lens of our wounds. Ameen. Allahumma Ameen. So there's a hardness to life, and it's a recurrent theme for most of us. It's a theme that we tend to forget. There's a hardness to life which ends up hardening our hearts because it's not easy. And the lives that we've led, through the families we've been born into, the cultures we've been born into, and the times we've been born, we have chosen to be born into, are not easy times. And they're not, when I say easy, it's not as if human life has ever been easy, but there is a cloak of ease that we pretend to put around ourselves when we pretend to go blind, where we pretend to live in our cocoons and our self-made shelters, where we feel this shelter is the only reality that exists and anything outside is not relevant to us. And we live in those shelters, those self-made shelters. There's a sense of safety that drives us to be here. And because we don't want to look at, we don't want to open the windows, and we don't want to let the light of the outside in, which will illuminate the really, really dark shadows that our generations, our ancestors, our grandparents and our parents, and most of our childhoods we've been living in. We've been living in with closed curtains, with closed blinds, closed doors, and we've been comfortable in that. Or जो चीज़ हमें ज़्यादा अच्छी नहीं लगती, we tend to push it under the carpet. So ये एक comfortable, एक easy life रही है, क्योंकि अंदर ही की struggles real होती हैं, वही struggles अपने ही तौर पे resolve हो जाती हैं, बाहर के कोई witnesses नहीं होते, चीज़ें छुपा के रखो, चीज़ें ढक के रखो. When you don't speak of it, it's not real. When nobody sees it, it's not real. And therefore, you don't need to address it. So we're not living in those easy times anymore, because the curtains are drawn up and the blinds are up and the doors are wide open and the light of the day is streaming in, and it's illuminating the darkest corners that we have. And the darkest corners that we have as we stand in the same house that we've been brought up in as adults. And that same house is this dunya, is the family. The same house that we've been brought in, जब हम लोग उसके अंदर खड़े होके अब उस broad daylight में उसी घर को देख रहे हैं और उसी घर के उन्हीं कोनों को देख रहे हैं. These are familiar walls. Again, when I speak of the structure of the house, this is the life that we're looking back now. These are familiar walls, familiar furniture, familiar peeling of paint. मगर उसमें भी वो चीज़ें नजर आ रही हैं तो perhaps our parents were not even willing to look at. And when we begin to see those things in which our parents are still living, and our grandparents' spirits are still living, and our cultures are still living, and maybe our people that we love are still living, that's an inhabited house, that's an inhabited space. उन लोगों को वो चीज़ें, they're not ready to see, उनको वो चीज़ें नज़र नहीं आ रही, पर हमें वो चीज़ें नज़र आ रही हैं. And there's a deep pain that comes with being able to see things, because some people call it a gift, this light of illumination, or this light of being able to see things as they are, is a gift that comes with a lot of pain. क्योंकि जब आपको उसी घर में जिसमें आप बड़े हुए हो, which is your life, when you're being able to see it and other people are not, it's a deeply painful moment. And there's nowhere to hide. And it becomes even more painful when the people that you love are not willing to look at those corners. Although the light is streaming in, but they're not willing to look at those corners. In fact, they will, and you also have the propensity to, but they will take up even more attachments and find even more distractions, embed themselves even more in their work, or in their everyday routines to not be able to look at those corners. But that's not an option anymore. In that way, it's a very, very hard life that we're living. वो option इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि somehow the senses have opened up. Somehow the energy of the world has opened up. जहाँ पे truth needs to come out. And it will not take it years and centuries for it to come out. It'll just come, it'll just pop up. It'll just pop up and it'll take you by surprise. And again, the harder part of being in that space, looking at those things, is actually not the life that you have led, but how that life that you have led and the choices that you've made, how that has impacted you. That's actually the harder part. Because when we are standing in that space and looking at those corners, your eyes tend to go back, are asked to come back into our own hearts and see how we have taken those, how those dark corners and those dark shadows have also made a home in our hearts. How the hardness of the walls that you feel in your home is also the hardness of the walls in your heart. How the shadows that you see lurking in the corners of that home are also the shadows which are lurking in the corners of your heart. How that carpet that your mother or your grandmother or her grandmother or her grandmother had drawn over things which were not comfortable and pain that was not comfortable, that pain and that carpet has also been drawn up in your heart. So in many ways, what we're asked to do is yank off those carpets and open the blinds of our own heart. And when we do, I feel like most of us, as we have walked on this path, the reason why we began to walk on this path anyway is because there is a softness that we have felt and have known about ourselves that perhaps we've not been able to exhibit to anybody else. And nobody else has had the chance to stand witness over that softness. लेकिन हमें अपनी वो softness हमेशा से नजर आती रही है. And the biggest tension and the biggest friction that we've felt, and the reason why we've had so much anger and aggression and this sadness and this loneliness within ourselves is कि मुझे अपने अंदर ये सॉफ्टनेस नजर आ रही है, ये जेंटलनेस नजर आ रही है, लेकिन मेरे एक्शंस में वो हार्डनेस है. तो am I the only one who can see it? And this, am I the only one who can see it, is, as it's true for all things of alchemy, has been our biggest enemy and our biggest ally. Because am I the only one who can see it brings a lot of pain. Am I the only one who can see it? Wow, I can see it. I can see it. It's there. I can see it. This has helped us move forward in spite of and despite all the hardness in our life and in the world. This one, you can see it. I can see it when no one else can. This has also helped us propel ourselves forward to understand more about where the softness is lying within the hardness of our hearts and how can I access it more. How can I access it more and release? Because when we say I want to access my softness, what we're actually saying is I have so much regret and I have so many wounds of my past, of my childhood, and I see those wounds reflected in my mother and in her mother and in hers and in my father and in his father and his father. It's like a mirror house of wounds, the same wound that I'm carrying. I see it all being reflected almost exponentially. इस सब हार्डनेस में से मैं अपनी सॉफ्टनेस को कैसे निकालूं? तो वो ये जो हमारे wounds reflect हो रहे हैं, it has the capacity to, and it does for most of us, it becomes a shackle around our ankles, holding us rooted to one spot because हमसे आगे नहीं बढ़ा जाता. Kyunki this is too much, because the pain of being trapped in that place of wounding, multiple place of wounding, becomes too much. And we're not being able to move forward because of that place of wounding. So too muchness may, how do you begin to access your kindness? And I know that, our first expectation is as we begin to access our kindness, automatically there is a shift that will happen in our own life, and somehow that kindness will reflect very quickly through our words, through our actions, through our behavior. मगर ऐसा नहीं होता. Because I want us to take a moment as to how hardness of the heart is spoken of in Quran. Allah Ta'ala says it's a specific kind of hardness which is cannot be likened to the hardness of the stones, because that's the hardest analogy we have access to, कि stone की तरह hard. But नहीं, अल्लाह ताला कहते हैं ऐसा नहीं है, ये stone की तरह hard वाले hearts ही नहीं है, because stones break. Some stones yield water. Stones do not remain rooted to one spot. वो नीचे रोल करते हैं और सजदे में गिर जाते हैं. ये stones वाली hardness है ही नहीं. ये है ही कोई different किस्म की hardness. How does even one begin to live with this hardness? And when we begin to want to shift it, to bring out that kindness that we feel, the gentleness that we feel within ourselves, how do we even begin that journey? It's not even a journey to the center of the earth. It is the journey beyond the terrains and the valleys that are terrifying, are lonely, are desperate sometimes, because the thing is, ये जो हमें अपनी हार्डनेस, हमें अपनी सॉफ्टनेस कंटिन्यूसली नजर आ रही होती है. दैट्स द थिंग, हमें अपनी सॉफ्टनेस कंटिन्यूसली नजर आ रही होती है, बट वी सो एंड बिकॉज हमें अपनी सॉफ्टनेस कंटिन्यूसली नजर आ रही होती है, वी सो डेस्परेट टू ब्रिंग इट आउट फॉर द वर्ल्ड टू सी. Somehow, for our softness to stand witness over the hardness of our past and the hardness of our actions and the hardness of our tongues, and say, no, 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 look, I know I speak a certain way. I know I behave a certain way. I know that I shout a certain way. I know there's a harshness to my voice. But look, can't you see the kindness, quickly, gentleness come out. It can't come out so quickly. And that's the kindness we're asked to extend to ourselves, because as is true for stones, even if we liken our hardness to that of stones, it takes years, it takes centuries. एक ड्रिप कतरा पानी होके एक पत्थर भी सॉफ्ट होना शुरू होता है. So how do we extend ourselves? Because I want us to feel into it कि हमें अपने अंदर एक मोम जैसी प्यारी, एक like a lotus like gentleness we have access to, that is so hidden over or so wrapped up with stones that nobody else can see it. और उसकी लाइट हमें अंदर से अपने लिए महसूस होती है, मगर लोगों को नजर नहीं आ रही होती. तो ये जो टेंशन है बीच में, इस journey, that's the journey. And in that journey, the one thing we're asked to do, to extend to ourselves, is the kindness that we want to show other people. We first need to be able to give it to ourselves first, because it is not easy taking this journey to the center of our lotus of gentleness. It is not easy taking that journey. It is not easy. And yet we have been brave enough, and we've been stubborn enough, and we've chosen in parts that sometimes we forget. We have chosen not to give up on ourselves when everybody else has given up on us. When our partners and our parents and our children and our friends and everybody else who's been a part of our life, and they have said, it's too late for them to change. This is who they are. This is how they speak. This is what their triggers are. We must walk across, on eggshells around them. When they have given up, there is a journey that we're continuing to take by continuing to show up for ourselves. And this journey through the rocky terrains of the heart down into the lotus of the gentleness of our heart. In that journey, if there's one friend we need, that is kindness, and that is gentleness, because it's a painful journey, because we're not used to navigating across rocky paths of our own hearts. हमारे लिए आसान है लोगों के पत्थर खाना. We have developed, for people who have been on the journey of wounding, we have developed a certain resilience towards being at the receiving end of stones. But when we are asked, which is what we're being asked to do now, when we are asked to walk down barefoot the rocky paths of our own hearts, it's unfamiliar and it's not easy. बिकॉज उन पत्थरों को शील्ड करना हमें आता है. हमारे पास डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म्स हैं, हमारे पास ऊंची आवाज़ें हैं, हमारे पास हमारी अटैचमेंट्स हैं, हमारे पास डिनाइल है, हमारे पास डिसोसिएशन है, हमारे पास फाइट फ्लाइट रिस्पॉन्सेज हैं, हमारे पास बहुत खूबसूरत डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म्स हैं. बिकॉज ओवर टाइम हमने सीख लिया है अपने ऊपर आयरन डोम बनाना, टू डिफ्लेक्ट दो स्टोन्स. so that we remain safe within. But when we are asked to go down within ourselves, there is no sense of safety, there is no shield, there are no iron domes, and our hands will scratch, and our bare feet that we're using to walk down those rocky, edgy paths, they will bleed, they will get scratched. And the only thing we need in that potli, when we're carrying that, as we take that path down into the valley of our own selves, where the lotus of our gentleness lies, the only thing that we are asked to do is take our kindness with us. And how do we access that kindness? What is that? What does that kindness feel like? For me personally, it is there are two duas that found me about 4.5 years ago, and I'm still working on shifting that wound. And but those two duas I'm being reminded of in the past 2 weeks again, because I had taken those duas for granted. Because remember, insan, the one who forgets easily, they just became a part of my daily, uh, you know, askar, and I completely lost touch with the frequency of those beautiful duas. And the most powerful, and it was again at a time in my life when I was the most hard. And in that hardness, I could see my own softness, my little girl softness so clearly, that the conflict was so big that I did not know how to move forward from there. And that's the point also of, for some people, where you just choose to want to exit the life, right? Because आपको अपना अच्छा नजर आ रहा, आपको अपनी लाइट, अपना नूर नजर आ रहा होता है, मगर बाहर बहुत ज्यादा दीवारें हैं. And in that moment, there are two duas that I had access to. The first one, Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya, which is Hazrat Ibrahim ki dua. Indeed, my Allah has always been kind to me. Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya. And before that, this is Surah Maryam, Ayah 47. Before that, I did not have access to the kindness of Allah, because all I could see, and all we can see when we are cloaked in the wounds that we have, all we can see are the hard things which have happened to us. All we can see are the wounds of us. उस सब में आपको आपके क्रिएटर की काइंडनेस नहीं मिल सकती है, बिकॉज आपको अपने ऊपर वो जो बरहक है, विच इज वैलिड, the hardness upon your own self and on your own nafs and of life, of circumstances, of your homes, is what you have most access to. But the fact, and in that being surrounded by only the darkness of your wounds, this one very tiny sliver of light, and it's very, very dim, a very tiny sliver of light that I was able to find. Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya. My Allah has always been kind to me. And I was like, okay. So when this dua found me, I was like, okay, Allah Ta'ala, show me how you've been kind to me. Because again, this was like a big battlefield that I had with Allah Ta'ala, right? Like, you abandoned me. You do not know who I am. You don't care. You're busy with the affairs of the world. So how have you been kind to me? And again, it feels as if, because I remember I took a trek down in Hunza. I don't remember names of places ever. I took a solo trip. And it was the rockiest mountain that I could climb, could go down, and there was no path on that mountain. But as I began to walk down, and I wanted to reach its valley, I don't know why. And it was a long, hard, harsh trek. But I remember as I began, I could not see a path. My guide who was with me, he said कि वो सिर्फ locals जहाँ पे travel कर सकते हैं, इसका path नहीं दिखता आपको, मगर वो path है, he said. And I was like, अब है या नहीं है, मुझे तो जाना है. When I started walking on that, there was a path between the stones, which has been walked upon by many travelers like myself, who also, like myself, wanted to, for some reason, wanted to get to the valley of it. Although it is a barren mountain, it has no shrubs, there are no streams in the valley. कुछ भी नहीं है वहां पे, कोई खूबसूरती नहीं है वहां पे. आपने क्यों नीचे जाना है हमें नहीं मालूम, बट बहुत लोगों ने नीचे जाना होता है उसके सेंटर में. In the same way, Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya, my Allah has always been kind to me. When this dua found me, there was a path that began to illuminate, not around the wounds, but through the wounds. And in the hardest moments of my life, I could, almost as if there are two, in that one film, say you're watching a film and there is a scene that you have. In that scene, there is smallest scene playing up on a screen that you have missed before. So a scene within a scene. And somehow you're very familiar with that room जहाँ पे वो wounded spaces हुई हैं और सारे rooms पे familiar हैं, but वो आपको वो screen within that screen कभी नजर within that room कभी नजर नहीं आई है. When we begin to recite this dua, Innahu Kaana Haffiya, our eyes and our awareness, the inner eye, our inner awareness is always taken to the kindness in that place of wounding. And that kindness somehow begins to help us redeem that place of wounding. And I do use the word redeem deliberately because forgiveness is a concept that I don't associate with. And forgiveness is a goal that I don't aspire towards in this moment. What I aspire towards is take me to that same place of extreme trauma and show me within that space what that kindness feels like. And when I'm shown what that kindness feels like, whether it was the presence of the fact that my sister who never gave up on me, or a friend who showed up at my house when I had nothing, with a plate of food when I hadn't eaten, there is a kindness or the place that I was living in at that time, when there was a landlord who didn't need to show kindness, but they did. And so the kindness of my Allah was always embedded in the extreme places of abandonment and extreme places of betrayal, in extreme places of rejection. It was always embedded in it. It did not come after it. It never came after it. It was in it. It was within it. And I remember, like, when we began to look at those rooms of wounding and our awareness is taken to those small screens of kindness, we begin to realize that without that kindness, this ability that we have to even be able to look back, because we would literally not have been alive. Like for myself, I literally would not have been alive. So without that kindness, I would not even have my breath. And those are the extreme moments. But then in more gentle moments, in not so extreme moments, the kindness shows up. Innahu Kaana Haffiya. When we recite it and when we feel into its frequency, the kindness shows up as these bubbles, these pop-ups within your everyday scene. The kindness of a runner who will pick up your call at 7:30 in the evening when you're out of something, and he has no reason to pick up your call because he's not even working for you or with you. He's but he picks up your call, and that thing, maybe it's a medicine, whatever, he just picks it up and he drops it at your house. The kindness within the same space. Because होता ये है कि जब हमारे पास extreme rejection or extreme betrayal होती है, तो it always, and we've not really redeemed those moments for ourselves. The small reflections of those betrayal or rejection or abandonment begin to play themselves throughout the rest of our lives. It could feel like रात को 10:30 बज गए हैं and I wish I had somebody to get ice cream for me. It could be very, very small, but then you notice that you have been enabled. Somebody shows up or you call somebody else. You're always enabled for that redemption to happen for you within that moment and not after that moment. Innahu Kaana Haffiya is Hazrat Ibrahim's dua. It was said at the time when he was asked to leave his father's home. And we know that the ties of kinship, the ties of our parents, are the hardest ones to redeem for ourselves, because it's the hardest place of wounding or the hardest place of generosity or gifts. And for Hazrat Ibrahim, it was a very hard place of wounding. His father was a sculptor who would build the idols that Hazrat Ibrahim did not believe. And he loved his father. And he was a gentle, beautiful human being. And at the time that he was asked to leave his father's home, he said, okay, I will pray for you. Because his father asked him to not show his face to him again. He said, okay, I will pray for you. And indeed, my Allah has been kind to me. Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya. Love the word Haffiya. It's been kind to me. He has put balms upon me. He has ointments that I do not know of. He has a way of manifesting his kindness within the rocky, hard, jutting, jutting edge spaces. He has a way of manifesting that kindness for me. And this access to the sense of kindness and the softness as we begin to walk down that rocky path to the valley of our own heart, where we can see the gentleness of ourselves even when nobody else can. We begin to see a path through those rocks. And that path, dare I say it, that path is a joyful one. And I do mean dare I say it, because it's not a hard-earned joy. It's a delightful joy. It's the joy of a little child, a little girl who's playing in a field and she stumbles upon a daisy kind of joy. It's a wide-eyed wonder kind of joy, because Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya is, it acts as a memory machine almost to bring up those unexpected moments of kindness embedded in our places of wounding. And yes, we did not receive it from those that we wanted. Yes, we did not receive it from those who should have given it to us. Yes, we did not receive it in the ways that we desired. Yes, we did not receive it in ways that were our birthright, that are our birthright. But subhanallah, we received that kindness in ways we could not have imagined. We receive that kindness in small, miraculous ways that our hearts could not fathom of before. It is this miraculous kindness, Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya, that automatically begins to reveal itself to us as we look back on the path of our own life, even as we're walking down the rocky path of our now life. Oh, this happened. Oh, that happened. Oh, didn't she show up? Didn't he show up? Didn't they do this for me? It's parallel film that begins to run with the hard film. And you're so used to always switching on the usual film of hardness, that the fact that, first of all, a parallel film exists in the same, if we are from the generation, the same VHS and the same videotape, how is that even, how, like, it's not recorded over, it's a split screen at the same time, it's a parallel film that begins to run. And because we can see our own gentleness, and because we are already walking down to the valley of our own heart, our eyes over time begin to drift towards the right side of the screen, which is the kindness that has been embedded in the hardness of our life. And gently, what happens is, pehle even split hota hai, hardness on your left and kindness on your right, as you begin to recite this. But then over time, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता वो राइट वाली स्क्रीन जो होती है वो इनलार्ज, वो एक्सपैंड करना शुरू करती है टुवर्ड्स द लेफ्ट. तो फिर काइंडनेस और बढ़ जाती है, फिर काइंडनेस और बढ़ जाती है, फिर काइंडनेस और बढ़ जाती है, फिर काइंडनेस और बढ़ जाती है. एंड देयर कम्स अ टाइम जहाँ पे ऊपर एक फिल्म ऑफ काइंडनेस चल रही होती है और बीच में से कहीं कहीं हमें अपनी हार्डनेस वाली चीजें नजर आ रही होती हैं. बट बाय दैट टाइम, इंशाल्लाह रब्बिल आलमीन, बाय दैट टाइम when the hardness comes in, it's now coming up through the lens of kindness first. And again, the human mind would say, अब तो आपको वो फिल्म भी काइंडनेस वाली नजर आ रही है, कहीं कहीं आपको झलकियां नजर आ रही हैं wounds की. Now can we please be act more kindly and like speak more kindly? Yes, with some time. In some time. Let us first get used to the fact that, subhanallah, let us first get used to the fact that I was always taken care of. Let's first get used to the fact that I was never abandoned. Let's first get used to the wonder of this creator that I have, who never walked away from me, who had always kept feeding me these small little honey drops in the bitterest moments of my life. Let's just get used to the most, let's just get used to the kindness of my creator right now. I'm really loving this moment. So there's a grace period. And we need to also give ourselves that even when we have fully access to the kindness of our creator upon our own past, upon our own lives, there will still be some time that we will need to exhibit that kindness from within ourselves towards other people. We will still need that grace period for ourselves. So one was Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya, and the other one, these two duas found me in parallel together. And the other one was Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya. Indeed, I have never been disappointed in my prayer to you. Now, both of them, interestingly, are from Surah Maryam. This is Ayah 4. The first one was Hazrat Ibrahim's dua. This is Hazrat Zakkriya's dua. And I love how he begins this dua. He says, Qala Rabbi inni wahanal azmu minni washta'al rasu shayban walam akun biduaika rabba shaqqiya. Oh Allah, my bones have become brittle and gray hair has spread across my head. But I have never been disappointed in my prayer to you, my Allah. And we know there is a physical, and we have understood so far about this about Quran. Okay, it is never just the physical fact of it or the the point in which he was making that dua. Because the physical fact and the point in which Hazrat Zakkriya was making this dua is about 92 years old, about early 90s, and his wife was barren, and he was a preacher. He was a caretaker in Jerusalem, in fact, and he did not have any offspring. एंड वो अल्लाह ताला से उन्होंने ये दुआ की कि मेरे बोन्स ब्रिटल हो गई हैं और मेरे बाल सफ़ेद हो गए हैं बट मैं आपसे दुआ एंड आई लव द हुसन देयर इज अ हुसन टू व्हिच with which you make dua also, right? So usne even in the way that he's invoking his Rabb, but I've never been disappointed in my prayer to you, Allah. Meri dua, I've never been disappointed in my dua to you, Allah. So this is the physical nature of who Zakkriya is. But at the time this dua found me, and we know what hardness does to us. We've become very, very fragile. The brittleness of the bones that Hazrat Zakkriya speaks of has nothing to do with old age. And we know that because now the diseases of the body, which are finding young people, especially young adults, and then older adults as well, but much before old age. We are diseased much before old age. So the brittleness of the bones has nothing to do with age. It never had anything to do with age. The brittleness of the bone is when we hold on to the hardness within ourselves, and over time that hardness also becomes fragile. It's a हमारी हड्डियां सूख जाती हैं उस सख्ती की वजह से from a physical from a physiology perspective. There is a dryness, the hardness dries up our system. There's a fire within ourselves that sucks up the natural life force, the water within ourselves. Our organs begin to dry up. And because they're not functioning optimally, then our bones begin to get brittle, joint pains, arthritis, हमारी ये जो बाकी की जो हमारी हड्डियों के जो दर्द हैं, हमारी spine के ये सब कुछ सब all of this is related to the brittleness of the bones because the organs are not functioning enough to feed it the nutrients. So the hardness जो हमारे अंदर है वो हमारी हड्डियां सुखा देती है. Zakkriya says कि मेरी हड्डियां सूख गई हैं या अल्लाह और मेरे बाल सफेद हो गए हैं. This sense of loss that this dua brought back to me at the time that I found it, and I'm now being asked to lean into the sense of loss again. There is a good part. And most of us feel that if we've lived in wounded spaces for a long time, most of us feel it's like I've lost the good part, the best years of my life. Whether those have been our childhoods or our teenage years, our young adult lives, I feel like most of us feel that we've lost the good years of our life. Where have they gone? Or what I have is very little. I have very little to work with. The sense of lack that we feel is valid because इन्नल इंसान लफी खुस्र वल अस्र. अल्लाह ताला ने टाइम का तो कसम खाई हुई है कि जैसे टाइम ट्रिकल डाउन कर रहा है आप भी ट्रिकल डाउन कर रहे हो. आप है देयर इज अ कॉन्स्टेंट sort of loss that we're feeling. So this is barhaq, this is beautiful, but this sense of loss that Hazrat Zakkriya's dua brings to life, that I feel sukhawa within. I don't feel I have enough resources. I don't feel that I have enough time. I feel like it's too late. I feel like I've gone through too much and I've walked down many paths, and I just don't have the himmat to do things all over again, anew, to begin again, however we want to look at it. I just don't have the himmat to do it. How do I even begin to do that? So this sense of loss that we feel, I've never been disappointed. Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya. I love this word shaqqiya, shak. मुझे doubt नहीं रहा कभी in my dua that I've made to you, Ya Allah. And Shock is hopelessness. There's a this the dryness within ourselves, the brittleness of our bones, the feeling of loss that we have carried, we've all experienced in one way or the other. And we're continuing to experience in some way or the other the feeling of loss that we're carrying within ourselves that sucks up the natural reservoirs of nutrients within our soul. ये जो loss है is not unfamiliar to us, but ये जो loss है ये एक दरार पैदा करता है. And I really want us to feel it's like it creates fissures within us. And those fissures are easy to make because the hardness that we carry as it dries up stuff within ourselves, already we become fragile in our hardness, and therefore we become brittle, and we know that brittle things are easy to break. So it's easy for those fissures to be formed. And those fissures are only formed when we relate because it has happened like this before. That is how it will now happen in future as well, which is our mind's way, of course, of keeping us safe. Because I've been carrying this loss with me, because I have walked this long path already. This is what the rest of my path more or less will look like. Maybe it'll have some moments of grace, but essentially the earlier part of my life or most of my life defines the rest of my life. And this shak, these fissures, remember shakal sidr jo hua tha, wo bhi that is the purification of the nafs that happens. Shak, there is a cut. It's a cut. And the cut is also how it cuts us off from the nur and from the grace of Allah, from the kindness of Allah, from the gentleness of Allah. This Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya wa Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya. These two I recite together because I know that there are fissures within me. I know that there is always a sense of it will not happen. My future, my then will look the same as my future then will look the same as my past then. So this shock that grows within ourselves is healed. These rifts, these fissures are healed with Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya. I have never been disappointed in my dua to you. And this is not as because I love Islam for the fact that it never just asks you to take a leap of faith. Never, never. It never just asks you to do that. It doesn't assume that you would ever do it. In fact, it says, please don't do that at all. It says, look back. This dua at that moment also asked me to look back. It says, okay, where is it that you prayed for a certain thing? Yes, you did not receive it that way, but did I not take you out and through it in a way that you could not have imagined? And I look at those big places of wounding where, and even 5 or 6 or 7 that one can map out, he did not disappoint. He did not leave me there. He did not leave me in that place. And yes, in the moment that I was in that space, maybe it would be years, but I found a way out. He showed me a way out. And I'd not even used to pray consciously in those years of my life, in those moments of my life. I was, in fact, an active rebel against all, like Allah was my this most distant, not just most, but he was just actively working against me, was my belief system at that time. But in moments that I did not even pray, I was taken out from that moment and that moment, and that in ways that now at that time looked like, of course, it had to happen. But now as I look back, it's like, subhanallah, because I know a few who have died, literally died in such spaces. I know a few have literally given up and chosen different paths as a result of those spaces. And yet I was taken out from those places. Why? Because now as I look back, I've never been disappointed in my invoking you, in my prayer to you. When I look back, I remember that even in those moments and in my hardest moments, I remember this one point, and that scene is so vivid for me. Of course, it's a big moment of trauma, but I'm like on my knees on the kitchen of my own home, and I'm alone and I'm crying. It's like, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. And in that moment, मेरी Ya Allah इसलिए निकल रही थी, it's like, Allah Ta'ala, you know, and उस वक्त Ya Allah निकल रही थी, हालांकि I had not spoken to him in years, in decades. तो उस वक्त मुझे Ya Allah, it's like, Allah Ta'ala, how do they not see the beauty of me? How do they not see? And now my tongue was not beautiful, my actions were not beautiful, so it's not a big surprise that nobody could see the beauty of me. But that was besides the point. I could see the beauty of me. So the only moment of grace I was given in that moment was, hey, you can see, you can see, you can see who you are. You can see who you are. Don't give up on that. And when you constantly keep your eye on the noor of you, on the wonder of you, on the softness of you, on the child of you, the daisy loving little girl of you, when we can constantly keep our eye on her, that we stand witness upon when no one else can, then we are shown paths and taken out, because that girl will find her way out of the hardest and the darkest of places, because that girl is divine, that girl is divinely guided, and that girl is a child of Allah. That girl is who we never take our eyes away from. And so Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya, again, like the first dua, brings our awareness to our own inner gentleness, especially when we can find it in no one and nothing in the outside world. We go back to the basics. And for me, the basic was, and I asked Allah Ta'ala, it's like, show me what my basic is. Show me how I look like through your eyes. Because I can't, and you can't see yourself when it's really, really dark. Even then, it takes a few moments for our eyes to adjust in that darkness. So we ourselves can even walk across the room, even when it is familiar. हमें mostly अपना आप नहीं दिखता, especially the beautiful part of us, especially the divine part of us, especially the noor part, हमें नहीं दिखता, especially when we are going through hard times. I said, Allah Ta'ala, okay, you show me. मुझे अपना आप नहीं दिख रहा. How are you looking at me in this moment? And when I say hard moments, it's easy to say that they were all like inflicted from the outside, but I mean hard moments from within and without. I was hard and the moments were hard, both. So I could not find a moment of grace for myself. And that moment I invoked Allah Ta'ala. It's like, I'm not being able to see myself. You tell me how you see me. Show me. And I'm lying down with him, and I have my eyes closed. And then I shift my awareness to the divine, which is Allah. And I said, okay, now look at me. And when I opened my eyes within myself to look at myself, the only awareness that came to me in that moment, and this is uniquely me, uniquely my soul, which is this girl of wide-eyed wonder, this little girl of wide-eyed wonder. And it's like, my God, Allah Ta'ala ji, you have always seen me like this, always. And I know the paths I've walked. I know the choices that I've made. And when you ask your creator to show you how he sees you, when you can't see yourself as that, then the grace with which you can show up in everyday life, the grace with which you can show up for yourself when you act as a heart person, is incredibly easy to access. Incredibly. Both of these activated with Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya, Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya. My Allah has always been kind to me. Where is this kindness? How has my Allah been kind to me? Because there is a constant eye with which, there's a constant noor with which Allah Ta'ala has held space for me. और वो हेल्थ स्पेस क्या है उनके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, मुझे तो एक ही नजर से हमेशा देखते रहे, ये मेरी वाइड आइड वंडर बच्ची है. And I know what that for each one of us, it'll be very different. But for me, I know what that wide-eyed wonder feels like, because it is that wide-eyed wonder soul of me that has led me out from the darkest place of my life, because all of the darkest moments of my life, because it's like, okay, I can see this wide-eyed wonder. I can see this wide-eyed wonder. I don't know why this is happening. I don't know why they're doing this to me. I don't know why I'm choosing this to myself, to do this to myself. In all those moments I didn't have the words or the energy. I could not tap into that frequency, but I had a knowing kuch hai andar, like there is something that's pure and that is propelling me forward, and there is some light and there's something there. And that wide-eyed wonder is what I now reach for as I find myself trying to get used to the fact that there is a beautiful, gentle, divine kindness at play at all times in the circumstances of our life and the circumstances of the world that we do not have access to. That wisdom, Ya Alim, Ya Hakim, we do not have access to the wisdom of the one who knows all. But we do have access to the fact, when we recite these both duas, we begin to have access to the frequency of his kindness. There is a kindness at play. And when you have access to the frequency, the natural language of energy is when you're tapped into a frequency, that frequency must manifest itself in every moment of your life. You'd see that kindness in the way a bird steps aside for another bird to come in and drink water from the same bowl. You'd see that kindness being made manifest by the way that the trees spread out their leaves to provide shade for people that do not know, for creatures that do not know, for creatures who will forget them, for people who would forget them, but they will spread out and provide that shade and provide that beautiful sense of sukoon for a little while for that wayfarer. You will sense that kindness in your own home, and I want us to feel into the vibration of our own pillow even. You will sense that kindness in your pillow, how it is always there for you. It is your favorite pillow who knows the shape of your head, which knows the shape of your head. Alhamdulillah for that pillow. It knows the shape. It welcomes you back. Even if you've had the hardest day, it welcomes you back home. Your bed, if we have it, or a place of rest, we have a place of rest. There is a kindness which is always at play. There's a fridge that's always there for you. There's a tap which is always there in service to you. You open it, water will come out. There is a, there is light. You switch on, light is in service to you. And then these things, and then there are roads in service to you, there are cars in service to you. Then subhanallah, there are people who say, acha, ye cheez khatam ho gayi hai, so you like the people who are always showing up for you in ways that cannot be defined as big or small anymore. Just kindness. They're people and things which are first constantly there for you and then always showing up for you. And the way to define them is not big ways or small ways anywhere, but just out of a pure kindness of my Creator. Even when He has taken away so many things for my own good, but at that time it felt like He has taken it away. So at the time that He was helping me release what was not serving me anymore, even He did not take everything. He left me with what I most needed. And yet, in that moment, I fought with Him. I was like, oh, why did you take away this and this and this and this? And He said, I'm taking this away because it not serve you, but look what I'm leaving you with. So what we have in this moment is the kindness of Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya, is the kindness of my Allah, is the kindness of my Allah, what I have in this moment. And where I want to be is a completely different film. And all I'm asked, which is not a film that I even need to put on right now. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares where I want to be when I'm fully in service to and in awareness of the kindness of my Rabb in this moment within me? When I'm fully in service to this, and I'm fully in aware of how beautifully supported that I am. And we see that kindness being made manifest in the people of Palestine. How they are, I was just watching this beautiful reel where this person is going back to his house and clearing up the rubble and just propping up a few things. And he's saying, look, I am back in my home. And to a one person who's not trained, or a soul which is not trained to look at or to feel into kindness, it feels like there are 5 walls missing. All he's done is cleared out the rubble literally and cleaned up the walls with 4 tiles which are left, and everything else is a disaster. And the eye of kindness is like, subhanallah, he has a place, he's come back home. Subhanallah, there is a new beginning. Subhanallah, there is a new chance at life. So in a big magnitude, in a bigger way, in a big magnificent way, the kindness embedded in the everyday life within our own selves, within the system of the world, even as it exhibits cruelty like we do, even as it exhibits hardness like we do. There is no kindness that is before or after it. There is kindness within it, as it is true for us as well. And it is that kindness that we're asked to give to ourselves when we show up as people of wounding, hurting other people. And what that kindness looks like is a grace, first of all, that we give to ourselves. Okay, I understand that why I did what I did. I have access to this wide-eyed wonder of me within me, the little girl who is not judging me, who is holding space for me. I'm going to stay in this moment a little while longer for as long as it takes. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to step out and I'm going to reconnect with that person that I hurt in whichever way that I can. Whenever they are ready, whenever I'm ready to extend that kindness to them as well. But there is no timeline to it. One may be asked to stay with grace within ourselves for a very, very long time. And that's okay. That's okay. Because in that moment, we are still feeling into and getting familiar with a very unfamiliar concept, which is of kindness that Allah is constantly exhibiting to us in every moment, especially the hard ones in our life. And we're also getting used to another very unfamiliar concept, which is to look back at our past, familiar places of wounding, familiar moments, but this time you see a film running within a film, a screen within that frame, which you had not seen before, where the kindness within that moment is brought out for your awareness. And you said, what? How did I miss this before? And when you begin to receive the kindness from those moments, that film automatically begins to fade away. The film of wounding already begins to fade away because the frequency of kindness is so strong, it can't help but take over. It just can't help but spread within yourself. And that way, the lens through which we view our past, subhanallah, begins to shift. It begins to shift because your eye is more riveted towards the moments of Lamm Akunn bi Duaeeka Rabba Shaqqiya, Innahu Kaana bi Haffiya. My Allah has always been kind to me, and have never been disappointed in my dua to my Allah, especially in those moments when I did not make that dua. I still have not been disappointed in my Allah because there is constant kindness that envelops me in this moment. Subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanallah.